Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Brown, the Vice Chancellor for Research here at UC San Diego, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Research Town Hall. We have some exciting news to share, updates to provide, and so we're so pleased that you can all join us today. I'd like to review first what the agenda will be for the Town Hall today. First, we're going to hear a bit about the pandemic situation and our own vaccination situation here in the county and on our campus. And then we will be talking about what some of the near-term plans are for campus and the fall plans in general. We have AVC Carlos Jensen with us to share that. And then specifically, we'll be talking today about the research ramp up, what to expect in the next few weeks and months, and as well as where we're currently at with that. And we have both Senior Associate Vice Chancellor Miroslav Kristic and Dean Jim McCarroll with us. And then finally, we have some good, exciting news about all the changes that are unfolding, the transformation essentially that's unfolding in our IRB. And we have the good fortune of having the IRB Director, Kip Cantello, with us. So with that, let's begin today. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Angela Socha. She's the Executive Director for Student Health and Wellness. And Dr. Socha will be providing the pandemic and vaccination update. Dr. Socha.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. On the next slide, you're going to see some overall encouraging news, but I also want to share some moments of concern that we need to keep our eye and awareness on. Globally, we are seeing overall improvement in the pandemic. Nationally, the surge seems to have settled down, but we are not seeing the continued drop. We're seeing a little bit of a plateau, and there is some apprehension that in some areas we're actually seeing an absolute increase in daily case rates, which then of course could have implications for death rates. You see how we compare in terms of our cumulative cases, over 30 million Americans diagnosed and infected, and there may be others that have never had a diagnosis. Some interesting stuff seeing in our blood banks of how many individuals actually have antibody, but were unaware they actually had an infection. And our death rate over 500,000. San Diego County numbers are there as well, so it has hit our community. Next slide. So good news, we are in the red and we are optimistic, and there are good reasons to believe. The indicators suggest we may actually be moving to orange, which will allow more of our opportunities in the community for greater density to occur. So I suspect by the end of April, unless things go in the wrong direction, we will be in the orange tier. So that is very encouraging. Next slide. I want to remind everyone that we are continuing to require weekly testing for those individuals who are coming onto campus. We think that this is an important part of our strategy. It's been extremely effective at identifying individuals who have acquired an infection, isolating them, letting them recover, as well as identifying the individuals they may have inadvertently exposed. The self-administered testing process works extremely well. We have expanded the number of testing sites, including the 2 drive-up at Osler and North Torrey Pines. You can see those on your UCSD app. You can identify all the vending machine sites. Just to let you know, in the second week of spring quarter, we will go to swipe card access. Make sure you have your ID with you. You use the UCSD app to identify your sample. And I want to reiterate this because we are still seeing 1 to 2% of samples of it seems to be employees, where the barcode scanning is not going through. Therefore, the sample arrives in the lab. We don't know who it belongs to. This step of barcoding and scanning the barcode is critical to identify the specimen to use. So make sure that occurs each time. If after 2 days you do not see a result in your MyChart, assume something is amiss, maybe the scan or whatever, retest. We can then track down to see what's going on, but in the meantime, please retest. Also, always check for your results. Don't assume that if no one's called you, must have had a negative result because of this occasional miss or lack of identification of sample. So I did want to remind everybody of this change, the new sites, as well as that you'll need swipe card access. Next slide. So here's how are we doing? We're doing well in San Diego. On the left, you see the positivity rate of the samples of every day. And that number, well over 5% just a month ago, is now down to under 3%. In our own community, our student rate is at about 0.1%, as are our employees. So 1 in 1,000 of the tests we do, and we do about 1,500 student tests a day, and about 300 to 500 employee tests. It drops a little off on the weekends, but then picks up during the weekdays. So we have had many days now where the COVID monitoring team say it's a bagel or a donut day, because we have 0 employees, 0 students, nobody in isolation and quarantine housing, and we clap and celebrate, and we have a short meeting. So those days are occurring more frequently, which is wonderful. On the right, you actually see the daily case rate per 100,000, or it's adjusted over 7 days to get a rate per 100,000 individuals. The red dot above are age matched in the county for our students, the 20 to 29-year-old. And you'll see that our student population has consistently been below their peers in the community. So our students have done an amazing job keeping themselves safe with the testing, with compliance with all the protocols, as have our employees, our staff. Everybody's done a great job. Next slide. So how are we doing with vaccination? Well, I think it's important to look at not the absolute numbers of individuals. 43 million Americans have actually had full vaccination. In other words, 2 doses. And full vaccination is not the minute you get your second dose if you got Moderna or Pfizer, but it occurs 2 weeks later. That's the term of fully vaccinated as well. When they give these numbers, it actually means the dose is done. But mentally, you should not think of yourself as fully vaccinated until you are 2 weeks out from your second dose. When we start having Johnson & Johnson, that same 2-week period occurs. At that point, you've reached the optimal benefit of the vaccine. Earlier on, you're building up your immunity and the protection. So 13.4% in the US, 12.8% of the population in California, and San Diego, look at our number. It may well cross the 19% mark by the end of today. We've done an amazing job. Our health system, along with some of the other health systems, have really been out in the forefront of giving these mass vaccination clinics and large distribution of vaccine. The RE/MAX Center remains open and busy. They're hitting about 3,000 doses a day. Part of that is driven by the doses we're given. We could go up and we can add more hours and we can add more, but right now the supply gives us about 3,000 a day. There are some days that are Pfizer and some days that are Moderna. Right now we don't have J&J. So you need to make sure you arrive on the day that the vaccine you are needing to have is there. We only do one type of vaccine on a given day. We do this for safety reasons. Campus employees and researchers, and this also includes the student employees, about 5,700. Actually, this morning, the number looked a little bit higher because each day these numbers look better. You make the slides yesterday and the numbers look better today. So student employees are in both spaces, but there also are students who are not employees because of medical eligibility or being volunteers. They also receive vaccination. So we've done a very good job with our campus community. What is happening over time is it is moving to the My Turn, you see below, website. Is basically, it's become more of an approach statewide to use a central process in all the various sites. And so you go to My Turn now, and it will be less of the health system pushing out appointments, but using the My Turn website. This is a transition that is occurring. And again, the Petco Superstation, unfortunately, is finally closed. It gave, you see 225,000 vaccines, an amazing effort. Many of you may have volunteered or contributed to the success of Petco. But that station is closed. And for now, the health system will not open a second site because of the way the distribution of vaccine has occurred. Next slide. Oh, I do want to mention with vaccination that individuals who are vaccinated, please remember, even though you've been vaccinated, you still need to mask. This is done for a number of reasons, and it will continue this way for quite a while. You have some susceptibility to acquiring infection. Your infection will probably, if you've been vaccinated, be mild, asymptomatic. It will not be life-threatening ICU or result in death. That is the big benefit of these vaccines. Even with the variant, they've been very effective against very severe disease. But you could acquire some infection and be infectious to others. There are a lot of studies going on right now to see if individuals who acquire infection post-vaccination are infectious to others. That verdict is out and it may vary by the variant. So we need to be cautious, and you don't want to inadvertently pass vaccination virus off to others. Also, there is susceptibility. You still have some susceptibility to acquiring the virus. The more this virus is able to infect anyone, even if it's without symptoms or mild symptoms, the virus replicates. That's how we get the variants, and it remains a threat. So we need to tamp this virus's ability to replicate down if we really want to move to a COVID-free or COVID minimally impacted world. Next slide. So we are going to continue to test weekly. The team is monitoring things very closely. We may modify this over time. It's very likely that we will modify it over the summer, and testing requirements will be changed. And they may be a little different for fully vaccinated individuals than they are for unvaccinated individuals. Masking, continue to mask. Please mask, wash your hands, and socially distance. So all of these safety precautions, we need to do them on us as a campus community and as a San Diego community. It's extremely important as we go forward and continue with the success we've had. On the next slide, I want to share that the modeling is going on because we're trying to plan for the fall, taking into account housing. It looks like we probably can actually have our students in doubles, which means more on-campus residential living, which is very beneficial to many students. We're looking at the instruction options, as well as how much we should test, how to leverage the wastewater. I think it's important to realize that on campus, we did not have classroom or research transmission. Any viral transmission was in the social kind of setting. Folks who were having meals together, whether they were employees or students, or they acquired from the community. And truthfully, most of the virus came from community interactions rather than actually campus to campus, student to student interaction. And that's not surprising at all. It was extremely encouraging to us that so far we've not seen this in the research or in the classroom setting. Next slide. So the modeling for the fall is really exciting. So this suggests that over the next fall term, with half of our employees vaccinated, we actually think we'll probably get to a better number than that. And with our students vaccinated, and we are very optimistic we'll have more than 50, and we might have 75 to 100% of our students vaccinated over the summer. We are expecting a tiny number of student infections to actually occur, and very manageable, very different than winter quarter when we had 40 a day returning. Now, we will have to watch spring return. Remember, next week we have about 2/3 of our undergrads have been home. They will be coming back. They will all be tested. And so we are anticipating a few more infections to be identified, to go through the isolation, the quarantine process. We then will hopefully quickly stabilize like we did in winter. Winter took us about 3 to 4 weeks. I'm hoping spring only takes us 2 to 3 weeks. And then we'll start assessing whether we can modify testing or any other activities on campus. So that's the game plan. So let's start the spring quarter off very conservatively, with the exception of the research expansion, which we're super excited about and feel very strongly this can be done quite safely in the research space. And so that change is one of the new changes for spring quarter that we'll start out with in the very beginning. So I pass it on to the next speaker, Sandy.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Socha. I think that was a very exciting news for us and real evidence that the effort that individuals have made on campus has really paid off. And it's put us in a position where we can think about how to have a fuller campus in the future, and for a discussion about the return to campus, both spring and summer quarters, we have Associate Vice Chancellor for Educational Innovation, Carlos Jensen. Dr. Jensen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to share again what the campus's plans are for the next couple of terms when it comes to the educational side. This is basically a summary of the details that were shared at the town hall on February 11th. And if after the fact you want to see the slides or even a recap of the video, those are all available from the Return to Learn website. But to provide a quick summary, as Dr. Sosha shared with us, all the indications look really good. We are proceeding very cautiously on the educational side, partly because it requires a lot of planning and pivoting from remote to in-person takes a tremendous effort. And because we want to take the safety first kind of approach. So spring quarter starting next week, we will allow indoor instruction again, now that we're in the red tier, but that is going to be for the limited number of courses that we're already planning to do in-person instruction. And so we're talking about on the order of about 150 to 200 course sections that we're already planning to primarily use the tents. Instructors in those situations have, for the last week, been able to decide whether they wanted to shift indoors or stay in the outdoor classrooms. For summer session, we are expecting a mix of both remote and in-person classes. Most courses, as we're seeing them be scheduled, are still planned for remote. We saw great success last summer with students really appreciating the flexibility and the options to make progress while being remote. But there are opportunities, especially for programs that are looking for kind of catch-up programs or opportunities for students to learn hands-on lab skills, things like that. Now for fall quarter, given the pace of vaccinations and the good news that we're seeing, we are anticipating a return to predominantly in-person instruction. This was discussed in the February town hall, and we went into a lot more details, but currently what we're doing is all classes are being planned as in-person, and we will have an adjustment period for class modality coming up in July. And July 1st, then we will have an opportunity for faculty to see, for campus to have an inflection moment to see where we are in terms of safety, as well as for faculty to make a decision about what they consider to be the right choice for them and their students. And a lot more details will be posted in a Educational Continuity Task Force FAQ, hopefully by the end of this week. And that's it for me.
Well, Dr. Jensen, that's such exciting information for us, and the notion of having a full campus with students actually going to classrooms by the fall, when other campuses across the country might just be beginning to experiment with a class or two, is a remarkable accomplishment for UC San Diego. I know it's all contingent on people attending to the health safety precautions that we have in place that have been so successful so far, but we've got a wonderful plan to move forward. So that's the plan for the educational side. And now we're going to turn to the research side of things, where we have been remarkably successful. And I'm pleased today that first we'll hear from Associate Vice Chancellor Miroslav Kristic about where we're at right now. And then we're going to hear from Dean McKerrow, his co-chair on the Research Ramp-Up Task Force, about what we're planning as of April 1. So first, Dr. Kristic.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Brown. Seeing all the questions in the Q&A, I'll be very brief. Next slide, please. We are approaching the 10-month anniversary of operating in what we call the orange phase, or the 25% phase, and we're ready to move beyond that phase. But currently, we have a total of about a little over 8,000 people registered to conduct research in any of the phases, the current or the future phases, with about 6,500 people approved for the current orange phase. You see here the distribution, which shows that 1 in 6 people would be a PI, about 30% are graduate students. And there's a healthy number in orange of other academics who are neither PIs nor postdocs. So those would be project scientists and others. This is a symptom of how welcoming our campus is for researchers who make their careers on soft research funding at UC San Diego. Next slide, please, if there is another one. Thank you. So there's a total of about 8,100 people registered and approved for across all the phases, and the bar chart shows all of the people approved. So, for instance, the second tallest bar, the orange bar for the Biomedical Research Facility 2, shows 550 people. That is not the actual occupancy at any point in time. That actual occupancy is somewhere between a quarter of that and some higher number, but definitely not everybody who's registered for all the phases is attending at all time. And this set of bars constitutes about 2/3. So there's a long tail of other buildings that contain smaller numbers of researchers. You will not find in this list some very large departments in very large buildings like computer science and engineering and other ones. So that's what it is in a nutshell. So I will hand it over now to Dean McCarroll, who will explain what the plans are. For those who have acquainted themselves in detail with the original planning about the 4 colored phases, our transition will be more creative than what we had envisioned 10 months ago. We're going to be going into a more flexible version of the yellow phase. It's going to be yellow with a hint of green.
Sure. So, yep, there we go. So here's the good news. It's always fun to be able to say the good news. So the good news is that effective April 1, those who have approved research ramp-up plans, which should be all the PIs at this point, can now move to on-site personnel at 50%. Remember, we were at 25%. Now we can go to 50% finally. So that's great. And so who's included in this? Obviously, faculty, research staff, students who are engaged in research or scholarship or any creative activity, students in training rotations or 199 undergraduates, thesis research, they can be on site. However, this does not include administrative staff. Just remember, administrative staff is not part of the research program. There's a separate administrative program that's run by VC Margaret Leinen. And right now, they're saying that administrative staff will remain remote through May 31st. And of course, this does not pertain to courses or any type of meetings or events. Again, this is 50% personnel in laboratories. And I saw one question that I can answer now, and that's about volunteers. Right now, only people who are UC personnel can be in laboratories. We cannot have volunteers in laboratories. That's not a decision made, again, by the Office of Research Affairs. That's a campus-wide decision. Okay, so just some notes. Remember that our ability to go to 50% was not a decision that was made within our campus. This is a decision made by the county. And we owe a great debt of gratitude to Vice Chancellor Brown and the rest of the team that had gone to the county and I would say pleaded for this, but argued for this and got it. All right. So as we go to 50%, remember that has to be people that are on your research ramp-up plan. And again, there have been multiple emails, reminders to make sure that you have all the people that you want to have in your lab on your research ramp-up plan. And all of the previous, there was another question about, does this mean there can be more than one person in an aisle, et cetera, et cetera? Yes. In fact, if even more than 50% can be accommodated if there's one per 150 square feet. So this would predominantly apply to people with dry labs. So the flexibility is there, 50%, but remember, as mentioned before, everyone's making sure that we continue to have masking, social distancing, okay? The weekly testing, someone asked, well, what if I'm fully vaccinated? Do I still need to have weekly testing? Yes. And the daily symptom exposure screening, which is that email you get that you fill out, okay, if you're going onto campus, all right? And then just a reminder that if you haven't, you should sign up for the California Notify app, all right? And of course, everybody knows to get vaccinated when you're eligible or invited. I think that's it. Oh, okay. Just a few more things then. Reminders, all right? List all your group members. I already said that, okay? You can add students that are in training or doing academic research group or have been on rotations and are now joining your lab. You can put unaffiliated volunteers on your research ramp plan. Remember, as I mentioned, they cannot come onto campus at this time. That's a campus-wide decision, all right? If you have not submitted a research ramp-up plan, please do, all right? And make sure that you've listed all the personnel on that plan, because that's going to be your 50%, okay? People that are on that plan. So any new plans must be reviewed as in the past by either chairs and deans, okay? And if needed, by environmental health and safety, all right? And for individual access to private offices or studios, et cetera, there is an employee work health management form that EH&S requires, so that has to be submitted, okay? Is there any more? I think that may be the last one.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Dean Macchero. That's wonderful news. We're going to ramp up to 50% April 1. So everybody get ready for that. We've been encouraging folks to get additional people that they hadn't included before on their research plan so that their whole team is represented. And this will be a circumstance where no lab is going to decrease. The only direction for you to go is to increase. If you're in a situation where you do your research, but you do it in your faculty office, and that's the sole group that we're talking about, it's you alone, then you use that alternative form. Otherwise, everything goes on the research ramp-up form. So I want to, before we move on to the IRB, just congratulate everyone that they've allowed us to be to this point where we can make this transition. How it goes in April will determine whether we'll be able to ramp up again in May. And so I really want to encourage everyone to continue to adhere to the safety standards, because we're hoping we'll be able to shift to an even higher level if we're successful in the month of April. So before we go to the question and answer period, I want to turn to the director of the Human Subjects Protection Program, to Kip Contello. And Kip is going to share with us how the IRB is transforming itself. And he has some exciting news for us as well. So Kip.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Brown. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I want to, before getting into the transformation of the IRB, want to go back in time to the guidance we put out last year related to COVID, to mention two specific things. And although I'm sure everyone has been checking our guidance on a daily basis since then, I did just put a link in the chat for your reference. But first is, we didn't know when we wrote this guidance how long the research environment would be altered by COVID. But we did put in there guidance for you that if you had to make changes on the fly in response to COVID, you didn't need to flood the IRB with immediate reports, but at least as you come up for your annual continuing review to assess whether you need to make these changes permanently. If so, amend your IRB approval, at least tell us what you had to do at your annual review, go back and tell us what you had to do to adapt. So this is just a reminder about that. And then also, I think, given everything we've been hearing today about the positive news and positive direction that we're all moving in, it may be helpful to refresh yourself about the guidance and just think about how to protect participants who may be coming in for visits and so on, or how to communicate with them about COVID risks and so on. Just because you do have an IRB approval for your research does not mean that that overrides any other sort of public health measures or safety measures that the campus puts in place. So with that reminder out of the way, I am excited to report to you all that some major initiatives that we've been engaged in for a while and have gone through some dark times with are coming to fruition over the coming months. Top of the list, and I'll talk in a moment in more detail about it, is the go live for the Quali IRB application and review system that will really change how we collect information from you, how we conduct the review process, and hopefully get you on your way more quickly and in a more collegial fashion with subjects still protected to the high standards that UCSD sets. A couple of other things I wanted to highlight that we have been rolling out at various speeds and with various degrees of publicity. First is the expanded use of commercial IRBs, especially for multi-site clinical trials, where commercial IRB review really has the most added value because of the economies of scale, where they're already reviewing a commercially sponsored trial for 100, 200 other sites, and it's essentially an administrative matter to add UCSD. So there are great benefits to going through those reviews. And these are IRBs that are fully accredited. They are well-established, long-established, acknowledged by federal agencies. So this is not anything out of the ordinary. We, in a way, are catching up to our peer institutions in expanding our use of commercial IRBs. Also, I've been involved in updating the UC system-wide human research protection policy, and that has also set the stage for a new campus human subject protections policy that was just released, I believe, last week. I'm not going to go into the details of those here, but as part of our Gear Up to Quali, we are going to be having a series of webinars starting in April, and these will be ongoing. We're really going to reverse our historical trends of kind of staying self-contained and silent, and we will be out there much more in front of you, telling you more about updates to our policies and processes on a regular basis, but be on the lookout for these webinars in April and onwards to hear more about what these changed policies mean for you in the research community, and then also additional announcements that we'll be making in the next few weeks about things like new consent templates and replacement of our existing standard operating policies and procedures with things that are more guidance oriented to really help you conduct your research and in a more flexible manner that is more up to date with regulatory requirements and best practices in the IRB space. And then finally, new training opportunities and communication channels. So we will be redoing our website. And as I just mentioned, we're going to be starting a series of regular webinars and so on to really keep you up to date and give you opportunity to ask questions, approach us about problems, and so on. Two things I wanted to highlight for you now. These links that are on screen are links to sign up to newsletters or posts that keep you up to date. First, about the progress with Quali IRB leading up to our June 2nd go live. So this is a newsletter that's run by IT services and helps us reach you out in the community with key information as we gear up for Quali. And then the second will be a more sustained newsletter that will push updates to you about policies, procedures, office closures, anything like that, rather than assuming that you are constantly checking our website for the latest news, we are going to push that out to you so you get that on a timely basis and know about the things that we're doing in the office. Next slide, please. So just to go into a bit more detail about Quali, as I mentioned, we're going live in June 2nd. I'm incredibly excited about this. This is something that I have been looking forward to for quite some time. What will happen on June 2nd is that you will be able to go in and complete applications for your new studies at that time. We will no longer accept applications for new studies in our legacy system, and that will happen right away. And then for things that are currently in our legacy system, to ensure that we have an orderly rollover and one that distributes some of the work that we will go through and some of the work that you'll go through, we're going to have a rolling transition. Most studies will roll over into Quali when they come up for their annual continuing review. We're going to start that process with studies that expire this coming August. So when Quali goes live, you'll be able to start going in preparing your continuing review applications for studies that expire in August or onwards. And then for the time being, for about a year, we're going to be juggling two systems. Hopefully, as uptake of Quali increases, then there will be less and less happening in our legacy system. And we're anticipating that by the end of June 2022, that's when we will turn the legacy system into an archive and be fully live and doing everything in Quali. And that year-long transition period can't end soon enough for me. As I mentioned just a moment ago in the prior slide, we do have an April and May full slate of training activities and communication activities. As I mentioned, policy and process webinars. This is really intended to not just set the stage for Quali by letting you know about the policy changes that we're undergoing, but even to take us back to some basics and cut through some of the urban legends that have grown up around IRB review and IRB requirements over the years here. The schedule for these April webinars was just released yesterday. You can go to that link, the Enterprise Systems Renewal website, to see the post and register for those sessions that you're interested in. We did divide most of the subjects up into medical research versus social behavioral research. You're not limited by the type of research you do as to which session you can attend, but just know that some of the content is tailored, even if we're talking about the same topic. Some of the content is tailored, for example, to social behavioral research that wouldn't be relevant to people conducting biomedical research. And then in May is when you'll really start hearing from us about previews and training specifically on using the Quali IRB system. We'll have different types of sessions so that if you are a PI who very rarely touches IRB applications, you have staff who do that for you for the most part, you will be able to jump into shorter, more high-level previews and trainings, and your staff, or if you handle your applications yourself, you'll be able to attend much more hands-on and detailed training, or virtually hands-on training. And just to outline the overall goals of how we designed the interface for you in Quali and what we're hoping to achieve by it is to really eliminate what has been characterized as a game show, that you are asked to fill out a whole bunch of information and throw a lot against the wall, see what sticks, and go with whatever the IRB kind of finds, and a lot of maybe inconsistent information. We're really tailoring questions, streamlining questions so that we are only collecting information that we need for IRB review. Also presenting you with common answers so that you don't have to guess what answer to provide. You will just see, you can pick from common answers, or if you're doing something unique because of the population you're interacting with or something like that, you will still have the opportunity to explain more if needed. We're also using the logic that's built into the system to take you down certain pathways depending on what type of research or what type of approval is involved. So for very urgent and very simple things where the IRB doesn't go into a whole lot of detail, such as an expanded access use of an investigational drug for treatment, we have a very condensed, concentrated set of questions to ask you so that we can help get you along your way. A fully fledged clinical trial that's very involved would, of course, have the sort of the biggest range of questions, but we do make it so that it's tailored and so that you're not answering a bunch of things that you don't have to answer. And we'll have a few things go live, but this is also something that's going to build over time. The idea that we're going to integrate with other systems so that information is shared, information is consistent, which will not only help you and reduce redundant information entry, but also help with reporting needs, both for central offices and you and your departments. So these are the sort of goals that we kept in mind in designing things. We think you'll be very happy with this. The testing that we've done so far, the response has been incredible. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, and we anticipate that this will be an ongoing effort to communicate with you and collect your feedback on an ongoing basis and incorporate that and be much more dynamic than we have been in the past. So that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kip. Exciting things happening for the IRB. And from my perspective, transitioning to this Kuali system that's designed with the researcher in mind, how to make this easier, faster, and more automated for the researcher. Should help us with reducing the back and forth that we often see, because we're making clear in the Kuali system what needs to be included. So I thank you for your efforts there. And also I'll say that since we had nearly 500 people on the line, if there are investigators who would like to serve as individuals to trial the Kuali system, I'm going to encourage you to contact Kip and because we want to get as much feedback in advance and see if there are glitches anywhere, so that by the time we go live in June, we'll be in really good condition with that. So thanks again for all the efforts. Okay, so with that, we do have a large number of questions and we have individuals on the line here to be able to address those questions. And having looked at them, they range quite markedly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Megan and to Faith to help us direct those questions.
Great, thank you. This first question is for you, VC Brown, and this is about access and vaccinations. Can we allow more people in our labs if all are vaccinated?
Yeah, the answer to that is no. And, I usually don't give one-word answers, but at the present time, number one, we're not allowed to ask about people's vaccination. That's a medical status question. So please don't ask your staff, your employees, your students if they've been vaccinated. Do not do that. So what we're doing is we're basing the 50% on this notion that by increasing density with the approximate number of people that we already have vaccinated on campus, we can increase to that level without increasing in general the number of unvaccinated people that we have in laboratory settings based on the patterns of density that we have at this point. So, so while we can't ask about vaccination, we can encourage people to get vaccinated. And the vaccination status is not what will determine whether we'll be able to increase density in the future. It's our success at avoiding further exposures and virus infections in this network that will determine whether we can go forward or not.
Great, thank you so much. This next question is for Terry Winbush, and this is about vaccinations. Can we require members of our research team, Can we require members of our research teams to get vaccinated? Will the campus eventually require vaccination for all employees and students?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Terry.
Okay, good. So what I can say at this point is, and it just really builds on what you were just saying, Sandy. We are not requiring anyone to be vaccinated. We are encouraging it because it is really important for everyone that can to do so for themselves and their families and everyone that they're around. But we are not requiring at this point, and we don't know if there will be a requirement. But just to echo what Sandy said, it is a medical question, so do not ask that information. And we won't be having any form of proof required at this point or anything like that. So we are operating on a being more careful basis and continuing to mask and distance and follow all the protocols that have been described so far.
I will just add to that the question of student mandatory vaccination is a very active one at this time. We do have other immunization, other health requirements for the student body. And so it is possible that there will be a slightly different approach to students as employees. So more to come on that issue. Again, I also want to emphasize that this is personal health information, so we need to be mindful and respect privacy. There may be some individuals for very good reasons who will not medically and should not medically vaccinate their relatively small a number, but we need to respect that.
Thank you both.
Dr. Sosha, this question is for you as well. Vaccination priority.
Yeah.
When will UCSD students or family members of UCSD employees get vaccines? Are there options for them outside of UCSD?
Sure. So hot off the press, it looks like we're going to be opening on April 15th, the state of California, to everybody over 16. So eligibility will no longer be medically driven as it has been for a while, or employment driven. That is also in conjunction with the distribution process that has changed quite a bit. Whereas it is now going to be through all the public will be getting vaccine through this My Turn process. The good news about if you get a vaccine through My Turn and you get it at, let's say, Rite Aid, or you were to get it at a different location, you went to the Del Mar Fairgrounds and you got vaccinated there, it will show up in your medical record, your My Chart or your My Student Chart. So we'll have knowledge about that, which is helpful in case we need to plan for second dose to make sure you get the right vaccine as your second dose. But that My Turn process is going to be the very busy, that is going to be the site that everyone's going to be using, rather than the health system sending out tickets to our employees, to our patients, our students. It'll be through My Turn, but REMAC will show up as a location. So right now, about half the people that are coming to REMAC are getting their invitation through a My Turn process or appointment through My Turn. Half are doing it through the traditional health system invitation process. So we're in this transition right now as we fall into step with the approach that the state is taking. So My Turn is going to be critical. It's how we will get it as employees, as students, and as our family members. They will be using that process, and you'll be able to access multiple sites in the San Diego area.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sosha. And I also have a follow-up question for you, or another question. And
Sure.
This is about testing. Information on weekly testing is confusing. Is it required for fully vaccinated campus employees and students, and for fully vaccinated health employees?
So the health system made, you remember, healthcare workers were the first in line to get vaccinated. They achieved a very high percentage of vaccination earlier. They also have some evidence that suggests fully vaccinated individuals are not at high risk for infection. Now, when I say that, I am prefacing that with the fully vaccinated. There are individuals, when we saw it, between first and second dose, or in the window between second dose and the 2-week period, and then rarely after even full vaccination, that do acquire infection. So for now, the health system for healthcare workers in the health space are not requiring asymptomatic weekly testing. They have moved to symptomatic testing only. We're not making that move on the campus for a variety of reasons. We have a very different distribution of vaccination at this point. We're at a much lower level. We also are being mindful that the variant is real. About 40% of what's circulating in San Diego right now is the British variant. And so we want to continue to get a little more stability. We want to look at how the students return. We also want to keep an eye on this. And so for now, we are continuing with the weekly testing. We also, as we mentioned, cannot separate the vaccinated group from the non-vaccinated group. And so there's some compliance there. But we wait very well over the next weeks, move to not requiring vaccination of testing, of fully vaccinated individuals. But for now, please continue to test weekly if you are coming onto campus.
Thank you so much. The next question is for AVC Hawkins, and this is about increasing access in research. Dean Macaro said we need to update our plans. How do we update our existing research plan?
Thanks very much for the question. So what you need to do if you want to update your existing research ramp-up plan is email researchrampup@UCSD. That's all one word, researchrampup@UCSD, with a list of the people whom you want to add. You should just give us their names, their email addresses, their role. Are they a graduate student, a postdoc, an undergraduate, a non-academic staff, and the phase you want to assign them to. If you don't tell us the phase, we're going to put them in the yellow phase since that's what we're moving into here. But all you have to do is email us that information. It will take longer for us to update the plan if you don't include all that information, so please do.
Yeah, Faith, I might just add one thing. As you think about how to orchestrate the people that are on site at any time, and again, I'm assuming that you're going to have schedules. Some people will be on campus at some times and off campus at others, so you may be able to accommodate more people in your research program. But as you think about that, you can include anyone that you've listed in the ramp up plans, with the exception of volunteers, students, but other employees, students that are there for educational purposes, thesis, dissertation research, postdoctoral projects, etc. They can all be part of that 50% that you bring to campus. So it's not contingent on which color code they're in right now. That's the flexibility that Miroslav Kristic was referring to. The issue is the cap of 50%. So anyone on your research plan can come in, with the exception of those that were mentioned that were prohibited. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sosha, we have another question for you, and this is about safety requirements. Can you please comment on lab offices and sharing? Are masks required at all times in the office for more than one individual? What if the whole lab is vaccinated? Are masks required?
So yes, masks are going to be required. And you won't know whether the lab is fully vaccinated, so we can't make that assumption. We also don't want those individuals who aren't vaccinated to potentially feel like they should imply that they are vaccinated when they're not. So yes, masking will continue. Also, we know that masking for the reasons of viral transmission, variants, escaping the vaccine, it's not 100%. Masking is something we need to do as a community anyway. So yes, masking will stay with us.
Thank you very much. This next question is for VC Brown. How are we empowering PIs to manage their students' compliance? Multiple students in my own lab have stated they do not fill out the daily screening tool, but there seems to be no way to make them comply with this or testing on schedule.
Well, I think this is both a question for me and Dr. Sosha, frankly. I will say that you set the standards in your lab. And if you are not comfortable with individuals' compliance, for those standards. And these are core expectations that help us maintain an open campus that have allowed us to get to this point. And if students are blatantly disregarding those, you can not allow them in your laboratory. You'll get reinforcement from our office, from EH&S, from a number of offices on campus with regard to that, because there is a procedure that relates to compliance for students and for faculty that's well established now and that we will continue with. So I would just say, don't hesitate, and that you're not alone. If you're experiencing that, there may be others in your department that are experiencing that as well. Department chairs can help by issuing notices. We are all part of the same team here to keep the campus safe. Dr. Sosha, did you want to add anything to that?
And for students particularly, this falls under the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Student Conduct. And there have been disciplinary actions for failing to comply. We've also had individuals who refuse to test, and they create a safety risk for other members of the campus community. So the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs Office takes this very seriously, and there are processes that go into effect for students.
Thank you very much. This next question is for Lance Scott, and this is about safety requirements as well. If your current approval includes an alternative risk mitigation plan, how will the relaxation of density impact it? Should we run things by EH&S first or again?
Yeah, it's a good question. For the risk mitigation plans, if the activities that you requested, say it was because you need to have additional people in a bay for a certain amount of time or something, if that plan now complies with the current campus guidelines, there's no need to do anything. You're good to go. Just follow the current campus guidelines. But if the plan was approved and it required more strict activities, that increase the safety of everybody, we still strongly encourage that. We still want to keep our space, keep masks, maybe increase mask levels, and do all the basic stuff we've been working on for a while. But if the plan that you had isn't working, we need to evaluate it for the new processes and all that. Resubmit a plan. We'll work with you, your department, the VC of research, and come up with something that works for you. We want these plans to work for you to get the research done and to keep everybody safe.
Great, thank you so much, Lance. Our next question is for AVC Jensen. The question is, will faculty be required to teach in person in the fall, even if students may not be fully vaccinated or required to be vaccinated?
So during this whole pandemic, we've been very responsive and I think very collaborative in working with faculty to assess what we consider to be safe and what we don't consider to be safe and where everyone's comfort level lies. And so as I alluded to in my remarks, as we get to summer and we have a better view of which goals we've been able to meet, more accurately what fall will actually look like, we will allow faculty in consultation with their chairs and their departments to make adjustments to their teaching plans from in-person to remote if they don't feel like the conditions are safe, or if we might have a larger shift if we are failing to meet the campus goals and benchmarks. So no one will be forced to do something they feel is unsafe, but we want to have that moment of reflection arrive at a time when we have better data and we have better insight into what fall will actually look like.
Great, thank you so much for your answer. This next question is for VC Brown. My lab would like to come in all together once per week. Our density will be such that we have less than 250 square feet per person. Will that be approved?
Well, remember, on-site meetings are not allowed at this time. We request that if you're having an entire lab meeting, that you do that on Zoom. And that you continue to do that at least for this month while we're trialing this higher density. And if it's, as was stated, if it's less than 250 square feet per person, our last standards were 150 square feet per person. But so if you have more than 150 square feet per person, you can have those individuals working in the lab. But when you're having them there consolidated and for extended discussions, that's the kind of context in which we're trying to avoid and to see so that we're ramping up this process slowly so that we can assure a safe environment over the next month. And then we'll be able to perhaps even ramp it up higher and to add other types of opportunities. But right now, no in-person meetings, and remember, stay masked when there are multiple people in your lab.
Thank you. This next question is for Kip Cantello, and it is about human subjects in clinical trials. Will the new Kuali IRB system require that we recreate existing IRB protocols? Will renewing protocols require using Kuali IRB?
So to tackle the second question first, renewals will be required to use Kuali IRB when those renewals are for studies expiring after August of this year. So that will be the basis of our rolling transition to eventually get everything active into Kuali. And for the first question, there will be some, because we're asking some different questions, there will be some work that goes into that conversion. It is not a wholesale recreation of the study or the protocol or anything like that, but there will be some work that does go into it. So we do have advice out there to set aside a little extra time at the time of continuing review to do that. There will be more guidance and more tools coming out over the coming weeks to help you navigate that.
Great, thank you so much, Kim. Our next question is for VC Brown or Dean McCarrow, and it's about increasing access. Can high school students volunteer on campus this summer, whether it's in the laboratory or just doing data stuff?
So, Jim, would you like to start with that?
Well, my understanding is that unfortunately no volunteers who are not UC employees or students or faculty can be on campus at this time. So the answer would be to that, no, at this juncture.
Yeah, I think that that's a very clear message. It's not that we don't want volunteers. It's not that we couldn't use volunteers. It's not that we don't endorse opportunities, especially for those from disadvantaged or minoritized populations. The issue really is that this is a trial. This 50% level is a trial. And we want to be sure that we can provide access to all of our students, to our faculty, and to our employees before we move to that next level. And we want to be sure it's safe for anyone that we would be bringing in from the outside. So I concur with you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for AVC Jensen about campus status. Since things are looking good, why aren't we preparing for in-person teaching in summer quarter?
That's a very good question. Thank you. A lot of that has to do with, again, the cautious approach. Some of it has to do with the fact that we we already have a lot of these classes scheduled, and shifting to more in person would cause a tremendous amount of work. Just to be clear, we are allowing in-person teaching over the summer, just up to 25% limit. This increase in density applies only to research. Teaching is still limited to 25%. If we were to go into the county orange tier or into the yellow tier, we might be allowed to go higher than that. But by that time, we would already have students enrolled and potentially classes already started. So this is the challenge with teaching, that we're always planning at least 6 months ahead, and we've got to set the rules as they are today, because it's too big of a gamble to roll the dice that way.
Thank you very much. This next question isn't directed to anyone. Oh, sorry, there's someone screaming outside my window. Anyone directly, so please just jump in. Do we understand why previous modeling predicting massive infection cases by the end of March did not turn out to be correct? How do we know the current modeling is good?
So Angela, do you want to take
I guess the modeling is modeling. Part of what that's really important is the R factor. In other words, for everybody that's infected, how many individuals were you exposed? And that number seems to have been less than we would have predicted. And dropping that number down, then when that number R is below, the R factor is below, I forget exactly what it stands for right at this moment, but as that drops below 1, then you're less likely to keep one other person infected, and the load starts shrinking. When it goes up, the load grows. And so I think 2 things happened, that prediction, what we thought it would be, was less than actually was occurring. I think we also saw the dramatic response to masking, and people really sort of saw the surge and the incredible, what happened after the Thanksgiving, Christmas holiday break and return in January, and masking went on very seriously. Whether or not the change in the politics about masking had an effect, and there was suddenly a recognition, the masking is so effective. So that reproduction factor of 1 being less is how the modeling went. Modelers do their very best, and we've been really lucky. They have done a phenomenal job for us. I think we want to be conservative, and the variant has actually been as impactful, but the viral load has not been as great. So the variant being at 40% is there. That's kind of consistent with what we saw, that the wild type would be overtaken by this British variant in relatively short order. Where it overstayed is the volume of virus that we thought we'd have in San Diego. That has been less than when we thought a while ago, in a wonderful way. And that's just because we stopped some transmissions, and it's pretty impactful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Socha. Our next question is for Rourke Miller. It is, when might international visitors to campus be allowed? Are we anticipating a change in policy on international travel for UCSD employees and students?
Well, I can speak to the federal regulations surrounding international visitors. There are still existing travel restrictions that are both COVID related as well as employment related. The current H-1B restriction is set to expire March 31st. We don't know if it will be extended past that date. The COVID geographic restrictions are still in place for persons in China, Brazil, Iran, the Schengen countries, UK and Ireland, as well as South Africa. And those are remaining until they are terminated by the president. So we always have to deal with those restrictions, but international researchers are able to get to campus, particularly if they're not from those countries. We see South Koreans, Indians, et cetera, coming to our campus. And persons in those countries that are restricted are able to go to other countries that are not restricted, quarantine there for the minimum 14-day period, and then proceed on to the US if they're able to get a visa stamp.
Dr. Sosha, I see your raised hand.
I was just going to say, I think this will stay fairly dynamic for a number of reasons. Partly because the vaccines being used around the world will vary in their effectiveness, and then the variants. The concern is that we import a variant that is highly transmissible, or even as equally important, a variant in which our therapies are ineffective. So some of the variants actually reduce the effectiveness of our monoclonal antibody therapies and other targeted therapies. And so there's a hesitancy to potentially introduce a variant that could cause substantial risk for the US population. So I think this is going to be a very dynamic space over the spring and summer.
Great, thank you both so much. Our next question is for VC Brown or the research continuity chairs. Could there be any further ramp up before the end of April, or will we be following these guidelines until the end of April and then decide from there?
Miroslav, you want to take that?
Well, we are ramping up, and the further ramp up could be possibly going from 50% to 75%. We're always hopeful, but we operate under constraints that are beyond the campus, that range from the county to federal, and we are meeting bi-weekly and discussing things almost daily as to what we could do, with an eye towards operating right at the limit of what is allowable in the county and medically safe, with our primary objective, in addition to safety, being all of the grants and publications and the graduations and the jobs that are sought by our thousands of junior researchers, which operating at a higher rate can only allow.
Thank you for your answer. This next question is for AVC Jensen. Will we be able to host on-campus conferences this fall? When will we know how to plan for fall events like that?
So we're gonna do an assessment over the summer of where we are. Our primary objective is to make sure that we can deliver on our educational and research mission. We want to restart events and the full, rich academic life that we enjoy or enjoyed here at UCSD before the pandemic, but we have to understand that events and meetings and things like that are going to take a backseat to the academic work and the research work. We hope to be able to gradually restart in-person events and programming over the course of the fall term, but we won't know how ready we are for that until we get to the summer. So if you have to make a decision today about an event in the fall, you should probably err on the side of caution and pass. But if it can wait until the summer or fall, then you might be able to make that happen. I don't know if anyone else, Angela, do you have any? No.
Oh, I think you're fine.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sosha, this next question is for you, so you can stay right there. The no-cost testing at Hillcrest ended. Where can we get tests for free?
So I think you can get them on campus at the Price Center. We still have provider based testing there, or provider observed testing. If you want to self-test and learn how to self-test at Price Center, that's the place to do it. If you've never had a COVID test, go to Price Center first for your first test, because you have to be in the system to be able to use the vending machines. And then again, take advantage of the vending machine options on campus. That is, all the sites are on your UCSD app, and the team corrected me and let me know Osler opens next week, and the Torrey Pines drive off is a little bit delayed, but will be coming in a couple weeks too. And so you can see the current vending machine sites on the UCSD app, and they're all loaded. Each vending machine has 600 kits in it. They restock them at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. So you should have access to the free testing on campus at all times.
Thank you very much. This next question is for VC Brown. Can we clarify the issue of volunteers? For instance, are students from other universities approved by HR?
Sandy, did you hear that question?
I did, thank you. I had muted myself. So I think it's important to have Terry Winbush weigh in on this, but it is my understanding that if you have a student who is becoming a portion of your laboratory, for example, I may have someone who I will pay a stipend for this summer to become part of my research team. We'll be working on a specific project in my laboratory, which may also count as part of that person's dissertation, that person would be allowed. But what we are concerned about, remember, is having folks coming in just for brief experiences from outside without having all of our staff having the opportunity to come back and to work on their projects, and our students being in the laboratory sufficiently to be completing their projects. We do need to remember that our priority is for these types of experiential and research-related learning experiences for the students at UCSD first. And that's true whether they're undergrads, whether they're graduates, or whether they are our junior colleagues like postdoctoral fellows. So I do want to share that. I think there have been some cases where outside individuals, if they come in a paid position, then they become members of your lab. And it's my understanding, but I could be corrected. If they are paid in your laboratory, that they could come on campus for time-limited periods. I don't know if anyone else would like to add to that. Terry?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add, which I saw a number of questions in the chat, and I appreciate the responses, is so there's a two-step process that I think, to make sure folks are aware of. There's the process by which you get a person to be approved to be a volunteer. That comes through HR. And then there's the process related to the research ramp up, where you have to have approvals for those individuals to then enter the lab. And so a person could be a volunteer, but still not meet the requirements to enter the lab as a member of the research ramp up, because either they're not here for a sufficient amount of time if they're from another school, for example, or other factors that are assessed by the research ramp up project team. So to the point, do we know? Yes, we know, but it's a separate part of the process that we aren't involved in the same way.
Yeah, and I agree with that understanding that it's a two-step process. And at present, the limitation is in the second step.
Great, thank you both. This next question is for Dr. Sosha, and this is about testing. Will there be swipe ID for health employees? Can health employees use the vending machines on campus?
They were working on that process to allow the health ID to be useful. Right now it's the campus ID, so it's good to have both and keep your campus ID to swipe access until we figure out to have both of those available.
Great, thank you very much. This next question is for Kip Cantello about human subjects and clinical trials. I have a human subjects research protocol that has already been approved, but I was not sure if I needed to submit anything new related to COVID protocols we will follow to conduct the survey. Are there special requirements?
So not from an IRB perspective, that's more of a facilities safety ramp up issue.
Let me follow up on that because there are specific guidelines for conducting human subjects research safely on the Research Ramp Up Challenge, Research Ramp Up website. And so we definitely want you to review those guidelines to make sure that you're compliant with them.
One thing I would like, before we go on to the next question, one thing I'd like to highlight is that we are a bit atypical relative to many other campuses around the country. And that is that we've tried to be very generous and inclusive in our approach to the types of research that can be conducted on campus at this time. So we do types of human subjects research, observational, interviewing, certain types of testing that other campuses do not, as of yet, allow. And that adds some additional risk because we are bringing individuals from outside onto campus. And there are very specific guidelines about their symptom reporting, both the 2 weeks before they come in and the day of. Now, it's not mandatory that individuals be tested, participants be tested before they come on campus. If you feel that for the safety in your lab that that's a requirement, or the safety in your research program that that's a requirement, then your project needs to pay for that. And the reason I'm saying that is that we do not want to have individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds further disadvantaged by their involvement here on campus. So our requirement is that individuals be monitored for symptoms, just as you and I are, and for exposure, just as you and I are. But we don't at this point require testing. And I know there were some questions that pertain to that. I think that process allows us, along with the behavioral on-site safety issues related to our distancing, our masking, et cetera, and the unique training protocols that we have that afford no more than 10 to 15 minutes of contact shorter with less distance than 6 feet, allow us to do types of behavioral research that other campuses are not, have not heretofore engaged in. And we want to continue that. We want to be sure that that we can do our behavioral research just as well as we can do our medical research.
Great, thank you very much. This next question is for Lance Scott. The question is, what have been major challenges with compliance with COVID safety protocol so far?
Sorry, what was that question again?
Sorry, I read that kind of fast. What have been major challenges with compliance with COVID safety protocols so far?
You know, at this point, I don't know that I would say there's been many major compliance issues on this campus. The campus has really done an impressive job in the research world and all of campus with complying with the recommendations and the guidelines from the county and the campus. So we've had some concerns about mask use and conference rooms being used for in-person meetings and that type of stuff. But all the departments have stepped up. We ramp it up to the chair of the departments, and items have been addressed quickly and effectively. So I don't know that we've had a whole lot of compliance issues that have risen to a very high level here.
And I'd second that. And I think that's one of the reasons that the county allowed us to go to 50%.
I did want to, there's, I think, a little confusion about perhaps something I may have said, or I didn't finish the comment about participation in diverse types of research. And that is that we do not count research participants in that 50% that we're talking about. We do not expect you to name individuals who are participating in your research study on your research ramp up plan. In fact, to preserve their confidentiality as we commit to, we would not want you to do that. You would not be, should not be allowed to do that. So I think there was a question about that, and I just wanted to clarify. Okay, we are near the end of our time here. I think we might have time for just one more quick question before we close. And again, those who have questions that we have not yet, as of yet, answered, we will get those questions on our website so that you can see those answers. And of course, feel free to contact us. But do we have one more question?
Yes, this last question is for you, VC Brown. Are recharge facility customers able to come in at the next phase?
Well, this would be not just my decision, but it would be a campus-wide decision that relates to facilities and management and EH&S as well. But since we currently have individuals who come to campus from for allowing the research programs to continue, such as delivering materials, updating or tuning equipment, those types of things, we should be able to allow folks in for recharge to the recharge service facilities. The issue, however, remember, will be that those individuals will be expected to adhere to the safety protocols that we have in place. And if this is something that is for regular use, then we would need to count them in that 50%. Again, these rules and regulations may change May 1st. So we will expect an ever increasing diversity of activity on our campus. And we're trying to do it in a safe and planful fashion, prioritizing our students and our faculty first, and then outside individuals that are related to the research enterprise. Lance, would you like to say anything else about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, very good. Well, again, I want to thank everyone who is on the line today answering these questions. I want to thank all the folks who are who participated today. We hope it was informative and useful for you. And you can feel free to contact us about types of information that you might like to hear about in the next town hall when we plan that, so that we're sure we get to the information that's most useful and appropriate for you. So again, thank you everyone for participating, and I wish everyone great luck with this doubling of the on-site activity that we'll have on campus. Congratulations and good luck, everyone. Bye now.